but it's the 5ICW class. In this class, there's two types of users. There are you guys, which are student type of users, and there's me, who's a lecturer type of user. And obviously, we are different types of users accessing the same resource. And obviously, based on the type of user we are, we might have different levels of access to that resource. So let's do some planning, okay? So there's going to be a resource, and I'm going to call this student files. Okay, just pretend that this is a common area that we all need to access because this is where your learning resources are, like PowerPoints, virtual machines, files, etc. So this is the resource. Okay. And I want to, before we do anything like that, we need to create some users. And if you remember worksheet 3, we created users with a home directory. So I'm going to just call that homes. Okay. And if with this home directory, I want to make this available on a network. So we go and right click on it and we'll click sharing. We go advanced sharing and we'll share this folder. And I'm just going to give full control to everyone. And we'll explain what those share permissions are and how they're different to the NTFS permission. We also say, yep, so that's the home. So now we've got sort of the ingredients. So let's create some users then. Okay, so before we can create users, in Active Directory, we create a organizational unit, which is like a folder, but it helps us organize our Active Directory. So I'm going to create one for our class called 5ICW. So you can see that looks like a folder. Then underneath this, I'm going to create a user account. I'm going to create one for myself, Alex Zhao. And if you remember, our naming philosophy is to user account naming philosophy is to use the first letter of the first name plus the surname. And sorry, I won't tick that. But our philosophy for password is to give it password 1 with the capital P so that we don't ever lock ourselves out. Okay, so that's an account that's actually created. I might just open it up with the properties and I might just put a description lecturer. And you know what? We'll go to the profiles and we said that last time we wanted a home directory. Home directory is a personal location on the network where you can put your files that only you can access. So I'm going to map it to my H drive, H for home, and I'm going to use a network path. This is what's called a UNC. So if you remember, we shared the home folder, didn't we, for this purpose. So if you look at the sharing, you can see that there's a network path here. This is called a UNC or Universal Naming Convention. It's for Microsoft shares or SMB shares, whatever you like to call it. It's / the server name, as in the computer, the resource is located, and the share name, which is the name of the resource that's being shared. All right, so you notice I've highlighted that and I've copied it. And then, because this is a home directory which is unique to me, I'm going to use the %username %variable, which will substitute this with my actual username. I'm using this variable because then afterwards I can actually turn this into a template if I wanted to, and I could copy this template over and over again. So if I click OK to that, you'll see that inside the home folder, there's a folder that's for my account already. It automatically creates it. If we go to Active Directory and if I open up the properties, you can see that that actually renames that variable to my actual username. The good thing about that is that that's a lecturer, that's for me, but I can create a couple of example users. So I can actually use this user account, normal user account. I could have created and named a template, but I could use this normal user account and actually use it as like a template and create it for other users. So I see that I'll use Tran because she's right at the bottom of the list on my on my list of students. So T Trung, and I'll give a password of password1 and finish. So there's her account. And if you look at the home directory, see homes, you can see that there's another folder appearing for her. You see, that's why I use that username percent as a variable, because that actually changes every time I use a different user. I'll give you another example. So I'll create another one. I'll copy Trung this time, and I'll create one for Shane. All right, and password1. All right, no problems. So I might just go into these guys. I can double click on it, put a description as student, if that's not obvious. Click OK to that one, and student for this one as well. Oops. I went too quickly, missed the T. All right, is everyone with me so far so good? All right. So you can see that these free users have home directories. All right, so don't forget, our aim is to give these different types of users access to this resource. And so instead of actually giving individual users access to a resource, it's always easier to work with groups. Okay, it's always easier to work with groups, which means that we don't have to manage 1,000 users one at a time. We can manage a group which may contain 1,000 members. So let's create a couple of groups. So I can use this group icon. So with Microsoft, they have a special methodology called AGDLP. That's A for accounts, G for global groups, DL is for domain local groups, and P is for permissions. And I'll try to explain that right now. So first of all, I create global groups, and I'm going to use the naming of GG to signify that's a global group. So it's going to be global security group. So global groups represents the type of users. So we said that in ICW in our class, there's two types. There is a type which are lecturers. Okay, so I'm going to create a global group called GG lecturers. There's also another type of group, so I can right-click new group, and I'm going to call this GG students. Okay, that's again a global group. So who's a member of students? Well, Shane and Trayan are, so I'll right-click on both of them, and I'll add to a group. That's one method. I'll type GG, click check names, and I can just select students, and they'll be both members of the student group. And I can double check this by going to the user account and going to member of. You can see it's a member of the GG students. It's also a member of the domain users, but that's because everyone's a member who's a part of the domain are a member of the domain users. I could also go to a group account and look at members, and you can see Shane and Trayan are both in there. So going with the other method, I can go to the group, I can go to members, and I can add, and if you remember, this is GG lecturers, so this represents lecturers. And who's a lecturer? A Zhao in this example, and I'll put him in there. So that's already users and groups, okay? But like I said, Microsoft recommends this AGDLP methodology. I'll just show you what it is right now, but I'll explain it a little bit later when we get to that slide. So we're going to create another set of groups now, okay? This doesn't even have to be in the AGDLP. We could be in another, so it doesn't even have to be in our organizational unit. We could call it DL groups organizational unit because that's not necessarily. So what domain local groups represents is the resource and the access level for the resource. So I'm going to create group. We're going to call it DL for domain local, student files. So the resource is student files, and then the access level. So for this one, I'm going to call it FC for full control. And we're going to make sure it's a domain local group, security group. And we're going to create another group. We're going to call it DL student files. We're going to call it M for modify. So if you haven't noticed, full control is full access, modify is the next level. And I might create another group, DL student files, and we call it read, write, execute. Okay, read, write, execute is domain local group. So that's a little bit different, lower than modify. And I'm not done yet. I can keep on creating files, DL student files, which is the name of the resource. And then we can call it read, read and execute. I don't know, I think we've probably got it as many as we need. So what? Oh, so this one's a global group, I've noticed. So I made a mistake there. So I'll delete that one. I'll create it again. So the main local group, DL student files modify. Okay, so I can see the group types right here. So that's why I noticed I was wrong. So yes, you can modify groups. So for example, if you go here and you go to properties, you can modify the group. You can change the naming, but you can't really change the type of group between domain local and global group. You can change it to universal group, but that's not exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so you can modify, but it's limited to what you can modify. All right, so let's think about this resource now. If this is an area where lecturers are putting files so students can access them and use them in their studies, what kind of powers or what kind of permissions should a student have to this area? Guys, I'll leave it up to you. What kind of files, what kind of permissions should they have? So if you look at us, with as I'll give you a poll. We'll do a poll. What permissions do students get to and first one is full control, modify, read, write, execute, or RX, read, execute. All right, so I'm going to just start this quick poll. So make a choice, guys. Which one do you think the students in this class should get to this folder that's used for giving for putting files for learning class? Okay, everyone should be making a choice. I won't be happy until I see everyone have a go and make a choice. Okay, so we've got seven people make a choice. So Junyup and Mitchell, what do you got? Okay, Mitchell, are you there? All right, so let's have a look. All right, so I think okay, so it's no one's chosen full control or modify. So no one's chosen full control or modify. Basically, oh, Mitchell's left the room. He wasn't happy. But you can see it's fairly even between read, write, and execute versus read and execute. All right, so let me ask you a question for those people who chose number 3. The difference between that one and the fourth is the write. So do you think that students should be able to write to the student files area, and why? Does anyone want to go answering that? Okay, if you got the headphones on, it might be easier if you put them on. So you guys who chose number 3, read, write, and execute, why did you choose that one over read and execute? No takers? Okay, that's kind of disappointing. All right, so let's think about it. Okay, so if this is area for files, so lecturers putting files there for students to use in their learning. So what does the permissions actually mean? Read means ability to open it and read it. Execute means if it's a executable, like a program or something, they can run it. And obviously write means they can change it. Okay, they can change it. They can create new files, and they can write. They can create new files, new folders. They can't change existing files. So does that change anyone's mind on what they're going to choose? Still got 3 who's got the read, write, and execute. All right, so let's drop down again. So it's gone down to 2. So Junyup and Mana, you're sticking firm with the read, write, and execute. Okay. Okay, someone's changed their mind. It's just Mana now. Mana, you there? Is there a reason why you're sticking with the read, write, and execute? Yeah. Is there a reason why you're sticking with number 3?
Did you say that when the write part, does that mean that other student can modify different
Yeah, so
student?
basically, if a student has the right, they can create files and folders on that folder, in that student files area. So
Oh, okay.
that's what it means. Would you
Oh,
like
yeah.
to change your mind, or would you like to stick with it?
Then I might change my mind to option 4. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So that sounds a little bit better. So basically, if it's the area for lecturers to put files for students, it wouldn't be good if students could add more files or folders. If they could just add a whole heap of rubbish, couldn't they? Yeah, you can just imagine. I'm not saying you guys, but just imagine a whole bunch of students straight out of high school, and I can put something here that'll annoy everyone else. They probably would, wouldn't they? So now that we've worked out that students need read and execute, what we have to do is we have to now use the AGDLP methodology and work out who needs read and execute to student files. All right, so if we look at members, there's no one in here now. Who shall we add? So it's one of the global groups, okay? Which type of user, students or lecturers? Who needs read and execute? Okay, so from our discussion just there, probably students. That's luck, what does that mean? Okay, so students from our discussions before. Lecturer needs, so lecturers need read and execute. Yes, they do, but do they need a little bit more? Okay, so we'll add the students first of all. Yes, would they need a little bit more? So lecturers probably needs modify, because modify gives the difference between write and modify is that modify allows them to modify existing files as well, whereas write only allows them to create new files and folders. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm creating users to represent actual human beings in our class. I'm creating global groups, which represents the type of users that are in our class. And then I'm creating domain local groups, which represents the resource that we're interested in and the different access levels. So we put the users as members of global groups, and we put global groups as member of the appropriate domain local groups. And then we go to the resource, we first of all, share it. By sharing it, we're making it available on the network. Second of all, we set share permissions, and we'll talk more about this later, but I recommend we share full control to everyone. And you're going to say, that's kind of funny. Everyone shouldn't have full control. But when we actually are assigning permissions to security permissions, you can see there's a users group here that represents everyone. So I want that. So I need to get rid of it. So if I click edit, I can't actually remove it because it's actually getting it from the folder above. So I have to go to this advanced, and I have to disable inheritance. Inheritance is where permissions given to the folder above get passed on to the next level. And what I'll do is I'll convert inherited permissions to explicit permission. What that means is that instead of removing everything, I'm just going to turn wherever is coming down to as if I gave it to this folder directly. So now I've disabled inheritance. I can actually go in and remove users, and that way no one has permissions right now. I can click add. So if you remember, we said the domain local groups. So we'll add all of these, and if it makes life pretty easy, so full control, FC, just give them full control. Full control is the most powerful permission, and when you give full control, you're actually giving them modify, read, and execute, list folder contents, and read. So and write. So it's each one's a different level. Modify, I'll choose modify, and I will give everything below modify. Where was that one? Execute. So it's by default it's already read and execute, and everything below, which is below read and execute. So I won't worry about that too much. And the other one is oops. This is a little bit too small. Read, write, and execute. Sorry, this is read, write, and execute. So I'll make sure I check this right, and this read and execute is there by default. And I'll click OK to this. That's fine. So let's actually have a look at this, okay? If I switch over to the Windows 10, which is the client machine, to our server, and I'll log in, and you can see that's part of the domain. I'm going to log in as Tran. So not Tran, Trong. And password is password1. And I think this person may have logged in before. No. So unfortunately, every time we log in with a new account, it's going to set up with a profile, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So bear with me. So it's unfortunately that's a problem with doing live demonstrations, is that you're dependent on the system. If I was making this as a YouTube video, this is where I would have edited the video, so it just goes right to the end of this, and then you wouldn't even know how long it took. So this is a live machine that's actually working as if it's normal. So this is what you'll expect to see when you're doing it. Almost there, hopefully. It's taking a while. There we go. So now we're logged in as a user called Tran, or Tran. And obviously we are using a domain account. And what we can do is we can actually map a network drive. If you notice, we already have a H drive mapped for us. Then if I actually just show you by creating a new bitmap in my H drive, you can see it's server 1 homes. To go to the server 1, I go to the homes area, go to Trong, and there it is. You can see it's mapped from a Windows 10 to the server. All right, but we don't have that we don't have that student files area because that's not actually mapped automatically for us. And we can do that with group policies or login scripts, but we haven't learned that yet. So we'll do it manually. We'll map a network drive. And call it it was L drive. That's where all our, if we're on campus, that's where all our student files are. So we might go and use the L drive as well. So if you remember, that network path was // server names. Our server name was server 1, and then the share name. And if you remember, shared the student files folder as that. And there we go. So there's the L drive, and that's mapped back to the server 1, which is here, which is right here. So if I actually create a new file here, if I go to Windows 10, notice the same area of the file system, but this is mapped on a network computer rather than directly on the computer, and that's what's called a map drive. So if you remember, what kind of user was Tran? What type of user was she? Guys? What type of user? Do you think this type of user, that's right, do you think this type of user will have the ability to create files here? If I go create, nope, okay, let's test it out. So if we click new image, oh, there you go. You need permissions to perform this action. So it's denying us. If I try again, no, it's not going to work. So cancel that. Let me just switch user now. Oh, I thought I could switch user, but that's okay. I can log out. There was a switch user. Sorry, I missed it. That's okay. I'll log in as another account. So if you remember, I log on as the lecturer. That was Azal. That was me. Password 1. And again, we're going to go through that initial setup of your profile and whatnot. So bear with me as that happens. Yeah, it gets a bit boring after a while. All right. Several minutes. That's not good. Yes, right now, as far as that's okay, Jack. As far as you know now, yes, you're manually mapping it. But like I said, you can automatically map it with group policies or login script, and that's something we'll learn in another subject. But for this subject, we're going to stick with manual mapping. All right, so again, if I open up my Windows Explorer, if I open up this PC, you can see my home drive is there. It's a different home drive because it's pointing to my user account's home drive. If I right click on this computer and map the drive again, and I'm going to map it as a L drive, // server 1, name of the computer, student, whoops. And you got to be very accurate right now. So you make a typo, it's not going to work properly. So I click finish, and then, oh, there's my L drive. All right, let's expand that a little bit here. There it is. There's my L drive. I click on it. I see that file. As a lecturer, do you think this user account can create a file or folder? All right, let's try that. No problems. In fact, with the lecturer account, if you remember, we gave this type of user the modifier, so I can actually go into this file and modify. Oh, so I click save as, didn't I? Just save. All right, so I've modified it, and if I go to the Windows Server 2019 and I open it as well, you can see that modification is in there. And another thing that modify has over write is the ability to delete. So write can't delete. So I can actually delete that file if I wanted to as well. So that's quite a powerful permission. It's powerful as full control, but it's almost there. All right, so basically just to recap what I've demonstrated today, I've demonstrated how I can create user accounts. I've demonstrated how I can create shared resources. I've shown you how to create group accounts and the AGDLP methodology, just to re-emphasize. Global groups represents the type of users. In our example was students or lecturers. There might be a lot more in real life, but in this little example, that's what they were. And then we created domain local groups. Domain local groups represents the resource, in this case, student files, and also the access level. So if we have 5 different access levels to the same resource, we had to create 5 different domain local groups, and we would put the global groups into the domain local group, and then we would give them, they will get the permissions. I'll give you another quick update. Like for example, if I go to this now and I go, hey, there's actually, I'm going to create another group. I'm going to call it GG Tutors. All right. Tutors as a special group. I'm going to actually make Shane a tutor. Okay, tutors are a little bit different. I'm not going to give them full modify rights, but I might give them the ability to create files. Yeah, good work, Shane. You've been promoted. I might add tutors to be able to modify. So write. So maybe that's where they can actually write the output of the results of actually assessing or conducting some tutorials with students. So I'm going to give them the right. And obviously, if I actually go to the account again, I'll switch user instead of logging out. Now another user, S Stewart, I think, password 1. And again, it's going to go through that. I just want to show you the difference between write and modify. Okay. So obviously, we had a bit of a discussion about write and modify just before. We said that write can allow you to create files and folders, but didn't let you change the contents of files and folders, and also it didn't let you delete existing files or folders. So let's actually see that in again, almost there, hopefully. All right, let's have a look at this. Okay, so we know all about the mapping of the drive, so we can just go straight to it. L drive / server1 / student files, and it's done. Okay, so if we actually expand this, we've got the L drive here. There's the file. So we're a tutor, we have write permissions. So if we should be able to open it, no problems at all. And we should be able to, if we try to edit it, oops, it's unable to edit, and that's the reason for that is we can't, okay, because of the right permission. But we should be able to create new files, new folders. All right, but let's see if we can actually edit the ones we created. I think we should be able to because we created it and we're we would be a special, as in member of a special, what's called creator owners. Okay, so we can edit the ones we added. And if we actually open up the properties of it, you can see the properties. But you can, if we actually go to advanced, you can see that the owner is actually Shane Stewart because he's the one that actually created it. So that's why he can actually perform some of those actions on that file.